Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, I want to welcome you all and thank you for coming. My name is Bob Duffy. I'm Lieutenant Governor, serving Governor Cuomo. Before I start with the opening comments, I'd like to acknowledge who is here. I'd like to start with Senator Carl Marcelino, who we are in his district, Senator Jack Martins, Assemblyman Fred Thiel, Assemblyman Charles Levine, and from our State Administration staff, Elizabeth Walters, before I get to that, Elizabeth Walters, who's the Legislative Director for Senator Betty Little. She is representing the Senator this morning. We have Kristen Proud, who's the Deputy Secretary of Human Services, Operations and Technology in the Executive Chamber. We have David Wakeland, who is the Deputy Secretary for Education. We have Donna Frescatore, who is the Assistant Secretary for Health in the Executive Chamber. We have Todd Sherman, who is the Chief Budget Examiner, representing Bob Magna from the Division of Budget. We have Amanda Hiller, who is from the Department of State, representing our Secretary of State, Perales. I think I covered everybody. This is the first and one in a series of public hearings that the Mandate Relief Council is holding to gather information from local government and school district officials, as well as the public on how to reduce the mandate burden on local governments, schools, and their taxpayers. The state relies on its local governments and school districts to deliver vital services to its residents and has often prescribed exactly how those services should be provided. When mandated costs rise, local governments have limited flexibility to control them. While local governments have been consistently vocal about the issue, their objections have traditionally fallen on deaf ears in Albany. Last June, as a first step to reducing mandates, Governor Cuomo signed into law a package of mandate relief that will save local governments and school districts more than $125 million. The creation of the Mandate Relief Council was part of this package. To further reduce the burden on taxpayers, the governor advanced a mandate relief package with his executive budget that will provide billions of dollars in savings to local governments, which include, first of all, Medicaid relief. The state would take over the growth in local Medicaid costs as well as local administrative responsibilities. This will save counties across the state and New York City $1.2 billion over the next 5 years. Pension reform, a new pension tier would be created for new state and local government employees. This will save state taxpayers and local governments outside New York City $83 billion and will save New York City taxpayers $30 billion over the next 30 years. Early intervention and preschool special education reforms. A series of reforms to these vital programs would reduce costs, lessen administrative burdens, and also would end up rationalizing the financing system of these programs. This will save nearly $250 million over 5 years. And I just say, to find out more about the governor's proposals, please visit www.newyorkgetinvolved.com and sign up for the updates. The governor's asked me to host a series of these hearings across the state for the council to gather information on the mandate relief package and its executive budget and other opportunities for mandate relief. The information gathered will aid the members of the council in their deliberations. You can find out more information about the council's website at www.governornewyork.gov/mandate relief council, including a calendar of hearings and meetings, the council's mandate review process, the council's statute, members of the council, and information on regulatory flexibility. In addition to providing these details about the council, the website also allows taxpayers, local governments, and school districts to easily interact with the council. The public can comment on specific mandates that the council is reviewing, as well as submit any other comments and ideas for mandate relief that they may have. Local governments and school district officials can electronically submit mandate relief ideas for the council to review. And that is the beginning of the overview of this process today. I want to thank you all for coming. And I'd like, before we start with our speakers who have signed up to speak, I would like to give our elected officials a chance to speak. So I'd like to, since we're in Senator Marcelino's district, give Senator Marcelino the first chance.
Thank you very much, Governor, and welcome to the 5th Senate District. The topic of mandate relief is obviously very important. State government, through various entities, including the Board of Regents and other organizations, applies various mandates on governments, local governments, towns, school districts, you name it, all for good reasons, generally for very good reasons. However, there are sometimes cases of unintended consequences which come with these mandates. Many of our districts have to deal with the 2% property tax cap that is facing them, and they're looking for help in order to meet that goal so that they can live within the cap. I am here to listen. I'm here to take recommendations, and hopefully, the work of this commission can be done as soon as possible. because I would like to see a set of mandates, meaningful mandates, that will give real relief, real economic relief to the municipalities, the school districts, and the like, so that they can go forward and prepare their budgets for the coming year, knowing where they stand. It's nice that we're talking about stuff that will go forward for the next 30 years moving forward. That's all well and good, but many of our people have to live in the present, and they need relief now. So we're looking towards the concept of relief. I want to see the suggestions. I'd be interested to hear many of the suggestions coming from the general public and the speakers that we have on the list. But I'm also looking for this commission to act quickly and expeditiously so that these people who are preparing their own budgets now, that will be voted on shortly by their various boards, know what they're doing and know what kind of relief they can deal with in a real sense. It's nice to say 30 years out is good. That's all well and good. The future is something important. We've got a plan for that. But these people need relief now from the mandates that are coming to them and are burdening the process for them. So as I said, I'm looking forward to hear suggestions, recommendations, but I'm also looking forward to very fast action on the part of this commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next, Senator Jack Martins.
Thank you. Last year was a great start. We achieved $125 million worth of mandate relief. For the first time in state history, we actually had a coordinated effort and passed legislation that provided mandate relief. A small measure, but literally a token in the right direction and a small step in the right direction. One of the great achievements I've thought of last year's effort was this Mandate Relief Council and empowering a group with the executive and members of the legislature to come together and actually evaluate mandates comprehensively and have the ability not only to suspend the application of certain regulations with respect to school districts and localities, but also recommend to the governor program bills that would achieve mandate relief systemically. This is that first step. We're here, we're listening, we're going to take suggestions back, and then when we do have an opportunity to meet as council, we will have the opportunity to begin addressing mandates systemically. You look around, not only here on Long Island, but throughout New York State, everyone talks about mandates. And we've talked enough. At this point, I think this council is prepared not only to continue to address the issue, but we're looking forward to the testimony today. We have great speakers from the county, towns, villages, school districts, chambers of commerce. Looking forward to the testimony today and looking forward to then meeting with members of this council and moving this agenda forward. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Senator. Next, Assemblyman Fred Thiel.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. First of all, I want to thank you for coming to Long Island and starting this process here on Long Island, which I think is very, very important. As a former town supervisor and county legislator, I'm extremely familiar with the issue of mandate relief, and certainly as a state assemblyman, I've heard about mandate relief for many, many years from my local officials. I don't expect to hear a lot of things I haven't heard before today. Mandates have been like the weather. You know, people have talked about them for years and years, but not a lot has been done about them. I have great hope and optimism for this council. I think you saw a change in the weather last year in Albany in getting things done. Things that had been talked about for many, many years as far as reforms actually came to pass, and I have the same hope and hope that the same diligence and persistence that brought those efforts to fruition last session will continue this year, and that we will be able to provide our local governments with the freedom and flexibility that they need to do their jobs. There's a lot of intelligence and a lot of creativity at the local government level if we just unleash them and allow them to do their jobs the best way possible. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to hearing from all of the speakers here today.
Thank you very much. Next, Assemblyman Charles Levine.
Thank you, Governor. The need for mandate relief in New York State, and especially here on Long Island, is compelling. The neighborhoods that I represent are all in a county that is famous, if not infamous, for collecting the second highest amounts of taxes in this state, and those are property taxes that we're talking about. While much of the focus of the Mandate Relief Council will be on reducing the burden that local governments and school districts face when affected by the numerous rules and regulations required by the state of New York, I also look forward to discussing the ways in which relief from these mandates will not only lower overbearing property taxes in our communities, but also reaffirm New York State as a great, if not the greatest place to raise a family and to open a business. And that's true for Long Island as well. As the Assembly Chairman of the Administrative Regulation Review Commission, we have sought to create a more hospitable environment for small businesses in our communities while preserving our quality of life and the safety and health of New Yorkers. There are certainly many ways to increase the efficiency of the operations of New York State's government. And I just want to say what an honor it is to be here today with my colleagues and with Lieutenant Governor Duffy, because this is certainly a transformative time, not only in New York's government, but in government and the way we look at government throughout the United States. One of the things that I hope we hear about today is the how the implementation of the annual professional performance reviews will affect our school districts at a time when our districts, our school districts, along with our local governments, have to operate under a 2% property tax cap. That is simply one of the challenges we face here today. I simply want to conclude by saying what an honor it is to participate in this important event, and thank you all.
Thank you very much. I'm going to thank all our local electeds for coming, and I want to just recognize in the audience Ralph Swazi, the mayor of Glen Cove. While he's not on the speaking list, I want to welcome Mayor Swazi, and also Assemblyman Murray is in the audience as well. So I want to thank and recognize him and thank him for being here. Our first speaker, I'd like to invite up our great county executive from Nassau County, County Executive Ed Mangano.
Good morning, Ed.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, Senators, Assemblyman people, and committee. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the County of Nassau. First, I want to commend the Governor, the Senators, the Assembly, and this committee for tackling the single greatest challenge that we face in Nassau County with respect to keeping our fiscal house in order and living within the cap. And that is unfunded mandates, or ever-increasing unfunded mandates. I applaud you for taking this issue on and understanding the effect that it has on our residents. And this is a giant step forward, and I am basically here to support you in your quest. You know, in Nassau County, we hear about a lot of unfunded mandates that have produced stresses here in the county. In Nassau County, our pension costs in 2010 were $94.3 million. In 2011, $113 million. And in 2012, $160.2 million. Now, we've managed to absorb these costs and reduce costs in the county to absorb this and not pass along a property tax increase. But obviously, as these unfunded mandates continue to stress our system, we need your relief. We need your help to address this issue. Medicaid, $250 million in our budget. Early intervention, $175 million. TANF and the safety net programs, $83 million. Daycare, $50 million. And as Senator Marcelino said, good programs with good intentions, but they need to be looked at, and we need to control the ever-rising costs in these programs and deliver these services more effectively. MTA station maintenance, $28.1 million. I think this is something where you can help us with and help the county achieve some savings there. And in Nassau County, you have a unique way to help us with what I believe is an unfunded mandate, and that is our assessment legislation on the state level that recognizes assessment as a science rather than an art. Similar legislation in Connecticut and New Jersey recognize it as an art and have a margin of error. A margin of error in that legislation would save taxpayers 90% of the problems that our assessment system has created. And for those of you that don't know what it's created here in Nassau County, over $2 billion of refunds and waste. There's $1.3 billion in debt and about another $400 million of unsettled cases, all relating to disputes over assessment. It has become a big business, and mandate relief, and a fresh look at that assessment legislation is requested and warranted, and we'd be happy to help you with that regard. But getting back to the program the governor has put forth, I applaud it for its relief. It is estimated for Nassau County and Suffolk counties collectively, we would save $75 million under the plan. And let me tell you, that's welcome relief here for our citizens in Nassau County. I think I touched on the issues that I wanted to touch on here, but I wanted to let you know that I am encouraged by this committee. The resources here in the county is available to you, and please contact me as how we can work more closely together to put forth legislation and reforms that will bring relief, help us live within the cap, and attack, as Assemblyman Levine pointed out, the moniker that we've earned as being among the highest property tax counties in the nation. We need to change that around. High taxes kill jobs. High taxes depress home values. We need to turn that around. We're working with the state and with our assembly and senators here to do just that. I thank you for this forum. I thank all the members of the committee here for serving on it. I know it's going to be a tough job, but it's one that is necessary to reform our government and to reform the way we do business. And as the governor said in his last address here in Long Island, and I live it, reform is one of the toughest things you could undertake as a government official. So I applaud you all. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much. First of all, Congress Executive, any questions on the panel? No. Thank you very much
Thank
for being
you.
here. Next, County Executive Steve Bellone from Suffolk County. I think he's on the way, so we'll move to John Kamen, who's the supervisor of the town of North Hempstead. Perfect timing, Supervisor.
Hello. Well, my name is John Kamen, North Hempstead Town Supervisor. I represent a town of about 240,000 people on the north shore of Long Island, also represented by our Senator Jack Martins and Chuck Levine and the Assembly as well, along with a couple other Assembly members. Our town, like other towns, of course, is dealing with the economic downturn, and we're concerned, like everybody else is, with the costs of government. We appreciate that we need to fund our government. We appreciate that we need to fulfill our obligations in terms of infrastructure, in terms of labor, in terms of public safety. And yet we, too, are feeling the weight of the mandates that are imposed upon us. Certainly, when we talk about pensions, I know that's a key issue. And one of the thoughts that I think is important for people to appreciate when talking about the potential Tier 6 is that even though it might be years and years and years before people start retiring, it's about an approach to government. It's about giving people an understanding and appreciation of what it means to be a public employee. And even today, we are now experiencing some of the savings from the changes in tiers from years and years ago. We just had our last Tier 1 person retire. So the benefits that we're going to start seeing now, and we are seeing, we have Tier 2 people retiring, Tier 3 people retiring, are starting to materialize. At some point, we need to continue to fix the system, recognizing today's world when it comes to pensions and costs and benefits and the impact that they have on our local communities. And so having a Tier 6 start now, I think, is critical. And so I certainly applaud the governor and all those that are involved with that effort to change the system, because it does change the way people look at government. And we need people to have confidence in government. And if the Tier 6 does pass, we think people have greater confidence in what we do, and that's very important to us, because I think that gives us the ability to continue governing as we should. One of the things I'd like to bring to the attention of this panel is, in terms of a mandate that has a great impact on us, deals with education. And you would wonder, why is the town supervisor talking about education? Because we are paying for the education of a number of college students. We are subsidizing students to the tune of millions of dollars. Our town is on the hook for $1.7 million to pay for subsidizing people, young folks or any folks, I suppose, that want to go to community college. Years ago, we appreciated the fact or certainly we appreciated that I believe the state wanted to encourage veterans to go to community colleges, and the different community colleges have different programs. And so someone from Nassau County should be able to go to a Suffolk County Community College, and someone from Queens County should be able to go to Kings County Community College, and that's wonderful to be able to share. The question is, why is the town of North Hempstead paying people thousands of dollars to go to school? If we believe if the state believes that we should be funding this education effort, then include it as part of the general tax for everybody to chip in. But for us to take certain people and then pay for their education and other people not to pay for their education is inequitable. The inequity is magnified by FIT. And this is, I think, a great injustice that needs to be addressed. We pay $11,000 per student that goes to FIT, the town of North Hempstead. $1.7 million. It's actually $1.1 million just to FIT each year. That's incredible that we are paying $11,000 per student of our taxpayers' money if you decide to go to FIT. If you go to any other college in the world, you're on your own, or you have certain loans, or you sort of have certain programs that are available to you. The state has certain measures that they can help you with. But if you go to FIT, we have to pay $10,000 or $11,000. $11,000 is actually a blended rate. What happens is the state law requires the counties, in fact, to pay for, to subsidize community colleges. FIT at some point went beyond becoming a community college. They have four-year programs and graduate programs. What FIT did is just continue charging counties for these costs, and they decided to take their $4,000 fee for their community college and then take their X fee for their undergraduate program, and then to add their graduate program. And they came up with a blended rate. So we're actually paying for kids to go to FIT, which is a pretty good school, not so easy to get in, and you come out of there with a pretty good degree and an ability to make a good living, and yet we then have to pay this $11,000 course blended rate to pay for this education. So the idea, we think, was good. The counties, but except that we think it got out of hand. The counties are able to pass it on to the towns. So Nassau County has decided years ago that they were going to put that state mandate that they have to pay, because there's a section of the law that allows them to put that onto the town, so we now pay it. Now, if you think about it, the county gets money from, say, Nassau County gets money from Suffolk County because Nassau County gives money to Suffolk County. So Nassau County gets money from Suffolk County, they theoretically invest that back in Nassau Community College. But Nassau County is not paying Suffolk County, we're paying Suffolk County, the towns, because Nassau put it on the towns. Suffolk County is now having this battle, whether or not they're going to pass this on to the towns as well. So if you're going to have a system where you make the counties pay for it, make the counties pay for it. Don't put it on the towns, because we don't get any benefit. We don't run the community college. I have no say in the community college. I don't get to participate in the cost of that college. I don't get to decide what the salaries are. I don't get to decide or weigh in on what investment we should make. My obligation is to simply subsidize the students and subsidize the county and ultimately subsidize the state, and we think it's unfair. So if I could do anything here today, certainly bringing this to your attention, that counties all over state are having. In Albany, they're having a battle with their neighboring county because some counties are paying in excess of what's right, and some counties are paying less, depending on the type of school or program that exists in a particular community college. So this is a statewide problem. We've talked to the county organization that represents all counties. Our county has taken the position, by the way, that we should in fact subsidize FIT because we've sued Nassau County in the town of North Hempstead. We actually won our lawsuit, and the county still won't pay us back, but they said they can't. So we are now footing the bill anyway, but the question really is, should the county be paying FIT? And we say no. The county shouldn't have to pay for the graduate program for FIT either. So we would ask this panel to consider having the law amended so that even if we're going to pay for the community colleges in this sharing process, which is, as I said, somewhat inequitable, at least get rid of the FIT component, and we don't have any ill will towards FIT, but we should not be subsidizing graduate programs in FIT to the tune of $11,000 a student, $1.7 million in the town of North Hempstead alone. Other towns are paying substantially more on Long Island, and so we would ask you to consider that. In terms of other mandates, we would love to be able to continue working with our state representatives on both the Assembly and the Senate and the Governor's office, and certainly yourself as well, and this panel, on every issue that involves local government. We believe local government is has such an important connection to community. People, as frustrated as they are with all of us in government, They do, at the end of the day, recognize that we fulfill an important function. Infrastructure is important, policy is important. The things that we do in the name of safety and just making government work are important. The question is, can we do it better? And I think we can. So, thank you.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Any questions from the panel?
Sure.
Good.
Senator Burns.
Supervisor, it's great to see you here. I appreciated your comments with regard to Tier 6, and certainly it's incumbent on government to take a longer view than the immediate. All too often, we do look at the immediate, but we do have an obligation to come up with policies that make sense. When it comes to pension costs, a lot has been made of the fact that the pension costs that our local municipalities are paying, whether it's the towns, villages, the counties, the state itself, has gone up dramatically over the last few years. Yet the benefits to our public employees have not changed. And what I would suggest is that the method that the state has for contribution to the pension system is a bit odd. Precisely when the economy is at its worst, when we're least able to pay, our local municipalities are required to pay more simply because the market is not returning the kind of return on the investment that we would expect when the economy is good. So 10 years ago in the early thousands, 2002, 2003, when the economy was doing well,
Right. We paid nothing.
we were paying zero. In the late 90s, we were paying close to 20%. By 2002, 2003, we were paying zero. Now we're up close to 20% again. And so there's a roller coaster that's inversely proportionate to the economy and our ability to pay. The long-term view, certainly Tier 6 would provide relief over time. Have you given any thought to the benefits of stabilizing and creating a flat contribution rate, actuarially achieved, so that local municipalities, including school districts, can pay a flat rate, so when the economy is doing well, they're paying the same rate as when the economy is doing poorly. But over time, actuarially, we can come up with a figure that keeps our pension funds fully funded, but provides relief immediately. For your town, it could probably save you millions of dollars. For our county, it would save us $50 million without asking our taxpayers to pay a single dime more, and without changing the nature of our pension system and our contributions and benefits to our local employees. For the state, it's probably going to save literally billions of dollars. Have you given any thought to flattening it out? Certainly there are methods of doing it actuarially, but it would provide savings immediately.
Yes, I could tell you that our town, during those years that there was zero payments due, we actually set aside money and did, in a sense, on our own, put the money that we thought would eventually have to pay aside, so that when 3 years later we got the bill, we didn't have to raise our taxes to cover that cost, because we knew that day was coming. The problem is, I think a lot of governments don't necessarily have the ability in a particular moment to have that foresight. The real, I think, benefit even of a tax cap is to make us think about maintaining the levels of expenditure that we have to pay year in and year out. It's the deep fluctuations that crush us. And the impact of the tax cap, in fact, is you'll see when certain villages and towns and other communities, if you have a major cost that you didn't expect, that will undermine your ability to stay within the tax cap. If we can have programs and processes where we are evening out the costs to governing and to funding a government, such as pension costs, that would enable us to, one, have a better ability to plan for the future. It'll give us an ability to have a more consistent taxing structure so that we don't undermine our credibility with our constituents when we do, in fact, have to cover these costs. And ultimately help us just plan better. So I think that if there was some way to do it where we had the information, the information, the knowledge is power. If the state government, I suppose, provided us with, or provided our financial people with a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan as to what the numbers would be, I don't know that we want to create another obligation to pay, because obviously we're talking about reducing those obligations, but just giving us the knowledge of how to maintain a steady sense. So we would give us the authority to create a reserve, a pension reserve, so that in off years, we could set that money aside, maybe get some interest on that, and then put that money into the pension in the future when the numbers fluctuate to where we have to make a write a big check. We had to send a $3 million check to the state for pensions a couple years ago. That was, where does the government get that kind of money? That's not money that you have sitting lying around. We had to go into our reserves, which undermines our credit rating, which costs us then more money when we have to bond for other capital projects. So the impact trickles down when you have to make these huge payments and you're not prepared for, or you have to raise taxes, and of course nobody wants to do that. So if there was a way to have more of a steady payment, and a lot of that is just looking at the actuarials and seeing what we can expect, and not necessarily just benefiting because one year you have a good market and the next year you have a bad market. I think that would be very helpful to local government at a lot of different levels.
John, I applaud you for having come up with that reserve and having the foresight to do that. I remember back then that most communities that had, or most municipalities that had that 20% contribution rate, when it went to zero, I don't remember anybody getting a tax break.
Right.
And so the system itself is built so as it ratchets only in one direction. And it affects our school districts as well, certainly,
Right.
When you do have these steep fluctuations. Something to look at. As far as the FIT equation, I understand and certainly I sympathize. Are you suggesting that counties take on that obligation and not have the ability to pass that on to towns? Because that would just be a shift of the obligation, trying to figure out, part of, I think, our responsibility is to determine which layer of government is best situated to handle any particular task. So you don't have towns and counties and villages essentially duplicating the same task. There should be a level of government that is best suited to do a certain task.
Right.
Are you suggesting that the counties would be best suited under those circumstances?
First of all, I think your point is excellent. That's exactly what we want to do. We should be doing in government at every level, is figuring out which level of government is best suited to pay a particular cost. What happens with mandates is, once they come down from the state, the local governments tend to figure out ways to shift them to somebody else. And so somebody's going to pay, and the question, the last guy, out the door is the one that gets it. In this case, it's the towns, because the law stops with the towns. The answer is not simply to shift it to the counties, although there's a rationale for the counties to pay this fee because they are maintaining or overseeing the community college. So like I said earlier, Nassau County is getting the subsidy from Suffolk County, and they're collecting that check. But they're not writing the check back to Suffolk County, the town's writing the check. So that's where there's an inequity there. With FIT, we believe nobody should be paying that. If we're going to pay for community college, we should be paying, even for FIT, for their 2-year program. If we're going to maintain that law, that responsibility, and again, I would wonder if the government wants to fund community colleges, take 13 cents, 15 cents out of everyone's tax bill and put it towards community colleges. But just to pick and choose, cherry pick students that are going is really not a fair way to do it. But it is the system now. If we're going to keep that system, have us just pay for the community colleges. FIT is an inequity because we're paying for graduate students, we're paying for full 4-year programs. That's not what it's meant to be. We don't think Nassau County should pay. We sued Nassau County. Nassau County took the position, the court took the position, that Nassau County shouldn't pay for FIT either. Nassau County is appealing that decision, saying, yes, Nassau County should pay for the graduate program and North Hempstead should pay for it. So just to make sure that we pay for it. So we're disputing that. We think that's wrong. So if there's, in this particular case, I think FIT should only be able to collect a subsidy for the 2-year program period, which would be $4,000 per student, who go to the 2-year program, not the graduate program or the 4-year program. But if we're going to keep any of it, it should be through the county because the county is getting the benefit from the other counties. The county, I guess Manhattan, where FIT is, they're sending money back to the Nassau County too for community colleges. Not nearly as much, but in that sense, I think the county should pay for it.
Questions?
Yeah.
Senator Marcelino?
Just a quick point. John, good morning.
Good morning.
Still morning.
Yes.
When we talk about shifting from one level of government to another level of government, we should always remember and keep in the back of our minds, or actually in the front of our minds, no matter what level of government we shift the cost to, it's always the taxpayers that's going to pay. So the county might do it, the town might do it, the state might do it, but it's the taxpayers going to pay it, ultimately, no matter what we do. If you had your druthers, if there was a genie who could give you a wish. Okay? A wish.
Careful.
Where,
There are no genies here, I just want to point that out.
Usually three.
I thought his name, I thought his name was Cuomo, but that's okay. But if you had your druthers and you could pick what you consider to be the most oppressive of mandates, the one you would really, really, really like to see go, which would probably benefit your constituents the most, which would it be?
Certainly, the one that's having the greatest impact on us now is this whole FIT education thing. And so that, then one of the reasons why when I'm thinking about what to speak about today, I brought that up because I thought that really was the one that's impacting a lot of different towns right now. So I think that would be the one that I think needs to be tinkered with and made more equitable. The towns don't necessarily have, the way the mandates are working, it goes to the counties, it goes to other levels of government, and then it kind of filters down to us. And so we're not, it's 1,000 cuts as opposed to one large, cannonball. So, I think that's our biggest concern. And then it gets into, pensions and other types of issues that we're just paying in ways that make it very difficult to maintain our budget. So for today, my answer would be the FIT issue. I would point out, though, in response to what you said at first, it always is the taxpayers. We are doing things, in North Hempstead, we started a program in regard to recycling. Every schools would come to us and say, we want to recycle, and yet they can't do it. And they're actually required to do it because the state requires the town to oversee the recycling of the communities, which is actually a good thing. I mean, just because the state requires something doesn't mean it's bad. Somebody has to create a level of requirement that gives us parameters to run our government within. We went to the schools and said, I'll tell you what, we'll pay for your recycling. What costs you $1 costs us a nickel. Because we do garbage. That's what local governments do. We actually have trucks, we have landfills, we have transfer stations, we know how to do it, we have employees already on the book. So we went to the 11 school districts in our town, and 9 of them signed up. We're still working on Mineola, Senator. 9 of them signed up. And we now do recycling. We have 34,000 students participating in our recycling program, and we actually bid it out, the town bids it out, we collect it. And when I go to the school districts, I say, what costs you $1 costs us a nickel, let us do your recycling, and we're doing it. And so there are ways for us to have economies of scale and to figure out who is best able to fulfill a certain function. When it comes to recycling and garbage, the towns do garbage best. We're good at garbage in a lot of different ways, some would say, but in terms of recycling, that's very positive. So I do agree. So at the end of the day, the residents are going to pay for it, and the residents are us. We're an extension of the residents. The community is going to pay. Let's figure out how we do it best.
Supervisor, thank you very much. Thanks for your testimony and your time.
Very good. Thank you.
I just want to welcome up Sean Walther, who's a supervisor of the town of Riverhead.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I just want to say that I'm so very impressed with the governor. Yesterday, I was with the Secretary of State Perales, saw the governor. I've actually seen the governor's speech now 3 times, but that says something about what the governor is doing, is he's getting his message out. I haven't been supervisor, was elected, started in January of 10. And for the first 2 years, we really didn't hear too much. So you guys are doing a wonderful job as a group, both the Senate and the Assembly, getting out. I will just touch on one thing that Supervisor Kamen said. Steve Levy did pass that community college mandate down to the towns last year, and he did it after the town supervisors' budgets were in place. For the town of Riverhead, it was $80,000. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is a lot when you consider it a 2% tax cap. We were under the 2% tax cap, but the problem is that that $80,000, some are saying, belongs under our tax cap, and we have zero control over that, and that's an issue that should be resolved. But thank you, Steve Levy. All right. I have 3 things that I want to discuss, and I know time is short for you. And I have to start out by saying I love the DEC. We're working with the DEC as our partners in the redevelopment of the Enterprise Park at Calverton. But there are 3 things that I want to touch on that are all DEC related, and some are a little esoteric, but I'll explain what they are. The first one is the Stormwater Management Program, the SWIP program. This is an unfunded mandate unlike any others. This comes down from the federal government to the New York State DEC, and the New York DEC said, we can't handle it, so we're going to put it down to the town of Riverhead or all the other towns. I will tell you that the town of Riverhead, since 2008, has expended $800,000 to implement the SWIP program. To give you an idea of the economy of scale, every $1 million in the town of Riverhead increase is a 1% tax increase. So $800,000 over 3 years is pretty substantial. We've been audited, as luck would have it, twice by the EPA in the summer of 2011. We passed the audits. As some of you know, I got on my knees at a public meeting in front of some EPA representatives asking them not to fine us. But this mandate has required us to do things that are not typically land use town of Riverhead things, and it comes to us through our stormwater management program, which is tagged on to our sewage treatment permit. We have to have develop public outreach, education, monitor all illicit discharges, do stormwater management plans, retrofit all of our municipal storm systems, and I understand that the need to do that, but we have to regulate not only ourselves, but all the businesses within the town of Riverhead. We hired a full-time engineer to do this. We are now, you can't necessarily outsource this, although Riverhead is trying to now because we've laid off 17 people and probably have attrited another 10 people, and one of the engineers in the town engineer's office is one of these people. But the bottom line is that an expenditure of $200,000 a year to comply with this program is exorbitant. And the towns, you know, our jobs, building permits, yes, I understand, police protection, garbage, there's some functions of the towns that are, everybody on, I think this panel would agree, that we are supposed to do. The monitoring of stormwater, sewage treatment, other things are not really town functions. They're DEC functions. The town doesn't have the expertise or the wherewithal to do this, so we had to hire it. Everybody that builds something in the town of Riverhead or any town on Long Island that disturbs more than an acre of property has to do a stormwater management plan. Nobody in the town of Riverhead knew how to analyze a stormwater management plan. As luck would have it, we hired one of the guys that actually helped write the DEC regulations for this, so we were in good shape, which is probably why we did well on our audit. But most towns don't have that. You don't even have the ability to do what we're going to do, which is from now on, we're not reviewing the SWIPs. We're going to farm that out to different engineering firms and let them do that. But this is an unfunded mandate. It sits better with the DEC than it does with the towns. And at a cost of, say, $150,000 a year, that's a lot of money. I want to hit on two other things. Sewage treatment. Town of Riverhead has 2 sewage treatment plants. As some of you have been to Riverhead, we have a thriving, Route 58, a thriving retail development district. Our downtown is on the mend. We are doing very well with revitalizing our downtown. In 2002, we finished an upgrade to our sewage treatment plant, about a $6 million upgrade. Our sewage treatment plant, I'm not going to say I don't know if I have the right, I'm an attorney by trade. I think our sewage treatment plant is designed to treat to nitrogen to 50 micrograms per liter, and the number may not be right, but the town is able to treat to 30. So the plant exceeds all sorts of expectations. In other words, we're doing a great job. The DEC came in and said, well, that was the best technology. And even though we told you in 2002 you wouldn't have to upgrade for a long time, but guess what, folks? You have to upgrade. We are designing the new sewage treatment plant. The design alone is $1 million. We have squirreled away the money to pay for the design. The construction of the plant is $18 million. That is a 544% tax increase. Let me say that again, 544%. Okay, sewer taxes on the average household, not that big a deal. It's going to be $50 to $100. To Tanger Mall, to Home Depot, to Lowe's, to Walmart. Folks, I'm going to bankrupt them with the sewer taxes. and here's what I've said to everybody, and I don't mean to be disrespectful about this, but I'm going to design it, and then I'm going to slide it across to the state and say, you fund it. Because with a 2% tax cap, the town board is not going to pass legislation to increase the taxes 544%. It would be cheaper, I think, to pay the fines to the DEC for as long as we possibly can. And that's not the way to do business, but we cannot pass this on. So let me hit you with the third thing, and again, I love the DEC, but I'm going to give you something. But I want to talk about something that you have the immediate ability to take care of, and you probably don't know what happened. And if you'll indulge me for a minute, I'll give you the history. This is an update to New York State CRR Part 182, takings regulations for the New York State DEC for endangered species. It used to be if you had an endangered species on your property, that you would determine where the species was, and you would do a setback area of 500 to 1,000 feet, and then you'd leave the species alone, and however that species would propagate, that would be acceptable. I'm going to say under the cover of darkness. I'll explain to you how this happened. And I think it was somewhat under the cover of darkness. In August of 2002, the DEC released new regulations ostensibly codifying past history. Really, they weren't codifying anything. If you took what the DEC wanted us to do at EPCAL and looked at the regulations, you will realize, gee, they kind of look the same. What this statute did, let me tell you how it was adopted first. August 2nd, 3rd, 4th, something like that, the regulations come out. They do no public hearings. They say that the comment period is written comment only, and by September 4th, comment is over. Now, mind you, when the DEC changed the environmental assessment form, they required public hearings to change a form. No comments other than written comments. Cut it off September 4th, 5th, something like that. November 6th, 7th, or 8th, they adopted the regulations 100% the way they were originally proposed. No changes. No public input. And I have to be honest, the town is in litigation with the DEC now on this issue. We have not been successful, and it is a waste of everybody's money for a municipality to go to the taxpayers to sue. But I want to tell you what this is doing, because this is a mandate you're probably not going to hear about. The new regulations require something that is really strange. It is not now that you have to set aside a piece of property and preserve the outskirts of it. You have to make the wildlife habitat better than it was before. So if you had 2 piping plovers, this regulation requires you to show how, through what you're going to do, you'll have 4 piping plovers. But then it gets better. You have to fund this forever, either through, and they suggest an escrow with the DEC, some sort of annuity, or something. What you have asked the local municipalities to do, and I'm going to use my example because we own Grumman, or the EPCAL facility. I'm going to go to the Village of Florida. I spoke to the mayor, I do not remember his name, in the Catskills. They draw water from a reservoir. The reservoir has a certain plant that clogs up the intake for the city water treatment facility. That plant is endangered. They now, under this takings permit, are not sure how they can remove that which is clogging the reservoir intake. So they used to just clear it. Now they have to show how they're going to make that species better. For the town of Riverhead, when we redevelop the 2,000 acres that are EPCAL, we're going to have to show how the spotted owl is better. Now, mind you, the DEC owns several thousand acres of property next to us and doesn't do any of this. And what you've done in this mandate, and this is not just for towns, this is a school district, this is Walmart, this is the guy that wants to build a hardware store on his 1 acre in Schenectady, New York, If somebody finds a tiger salamander on his property, he's got to deal with this. You have, the DEC in this one regulation has shifted the burden of protecting wildlife from the DEC to the private and municipal landowner. So I ask you to look into that. I know these are probably not the mandates that some other people are talking about, and trust me, we should be cutting back on working on the pension systems and everything Supervisor Kamen said. I agree 110%, but I figured I'd give you a little bit different
everything.
flavor. Everything. I love Supervisor Kamen. He's wonderful. I sit with him on the Regional Planning Council.
Supervisor, first of all, thank you very much. Before any questions, one thing I will do is ensure that Commissioner Martens and his regional rep contacts your office next week.
Okay,
And in
thank
spite
you.
of the litigation issue, I think it's a point that's well taken. So one of the things we can do is hopefully at least increase the level of communication and see what will emanate from that. But I will ask that be done next week, and I appreciate your comments on that.
We had one thing, and if the regulation is what needs to be adopted, we understand that. Roll it back and go through the process of public hearings throughout the state, because when the people realize what has been passed, they're going to come out with pitchforks, if you will. And what is very interesting about this regulation is it had been proposed several times in the Assembly and never made it out of the Assembly, and not regulation, statute. So I'd love to settle the case. We don't want to win. We just want you to roll it back and go through the process.
I appreciate your comments, and that's actually one of the responsibilities of the mandate relief
Thank you,
panel as
sir.
well. So I appreciate that, and I'll make sure that the Commissioner will reach out to your office next week. I'm going to open the panel for any questions.
Sure. Valentine's Day is coming. I will, I love the DEC. I will transmit that to Albany on Monday when I return.
Thank you.
But the question you mentioned, which I think is the broader issue of the ones that you mentioned, is sewage treatment plants. And, we're going through on Long Island this whole thing, the degradation of water quality. If anything, we're talking about the need to, not just in Riverhead, but across the island, the need to expand, upgrade, everything with sewage treatments and treatment. And, the issue is, I remember when the scavenger waste plant with Riverhead and Southampton was built in the late 1970s, early 1980s.
Right.
And it was 87.5% funded by the federal government under the Clean Water Act and by the state of New York. And the last time you had to upgrade your sewage treatment plant, which was about 15 years ago, there was the Clean Water, Clean Air Bond Act of the state, and you were able to get state funding
Correct.
for that, and I believe other municipalities like the village of Sag Harbor were able to get state funding for that too. To my knowledge, we have a depleted environmental protection fund, no bond act, no federal money. The difference between all of these actions that were taken to protect drinking water was you had federal and state partners, and these are all worthy projects, but that partnership, and listen, we all are dealing with difficult budgets, and as are you, in addition to a tax cap, but there's got to be some way, and the federal government needs to be involved with this also when we're talking about sewage treatment, because local governments cannot absorb these kinds of costs, whether it be Riverhead or any other place, I think, across the state.
Agreed.
Questions from the panel?
Just
Senator?
a quick question. As Lieutenant Governor said, part of our responsibility, I think, is also to review actions of state agencies, oftentimes having greater impact on our local municipalities than perhaps even the statutes that they're supposed to be interpreting. I'm sure as we go through the testimony today, we're going to hear from superintendents from our school districts. They're going to talk to us about APPR. And we can go back and look at the statute, race to the top legislation, and then look at the way that the State Ed Department has interpreted that statute with regard to certain regulations that they've imposed on our school districts and the costs of those. And I think we're dealing with a very similar situation here when it comes to DEC. Well-intentioned, as Senator Marcelino said earlier, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions as well. It's part of, I think, our responsibility as we sit here, and I truly appreciate your comments, that we do also have to look at these regulations and the law of unintended consequences when it comes to that, because they can also be quite severe. Just a quick point on the sewage treatment plant. You used the analogy of the 50 microns and you're actually at 30 microns. what's the target standard that the DEC is looking to achieve by requiring you to spend not only $1 million on design, but $18 million on a new plant?
I believe it's 10. And I'm not sure about the 50-30. It may be 40-30 that we're treating to. I should have written that down. I had work session all day yesterday, so,
No,
I think it's 10.
My point is the water is potable right now.
Well-
It's being treated to a certain
Yes.
certain degree right now.
I wouldn't drink it, but
I
yes.
understand.
I asked my
understand.
sewer superintendent, who's my best department, I drink it all the time. He says, it's not meant for drinking.
Not meant for drinking. I understand. But that's what we're dealing with. So the additional expense would actually reduce it minimally, but it is
Yes.
an expense that you're going to have.
We are going to try to work with Suffolk County to irrigate Indian Island Golf Course with that, and as you can imagine, some people don't necessarily like that idea, but if you go to other areas of the world, that's what you irrigate golf courses with. So we're hoping to do that, but we could turn it into a swamp. We'll never be able to irrigate everything or put all our effluent on the golf course, but we are trying to do that.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Can I just ask him the same question
Senator, go ahead.
that I asked Supervisor Kamen? If you had your druthers, and I've heard what you just said, but you heard my question before, which of the mandates would you like to see relief from that would provide the biggest benefit to your constituency?
It's a toss-up between the sewage treatment mandate and the $150,000 a year for stormwater pollution prevention. It probably would be the sewage treatment mandate because that is going to be an expense that has to be incurred immediately. The other one is one of those 1,000 cuts, the $100,000, $150,000 a year to keep the stormwater. But I can withstand that because it's built in the budget. So getting relief for sewage treatment. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do the upgrade. I'm just saying for $18 million, what is the benefit to go from 30 micrograms, whatever it is, to 10? I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
Thank you.
Questions?
Last summer, Governor Cuomo signed into law a bill that prohibits state agencies from imposing new rules and regulations in the absence of a grace period. And ideally, the grace period is a period of time in which local governments would be able to learn about the provisions of the changes of the law. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have that in 2002, and there's no guarantee that that would have saved the situation that arose at Calverton. Now, let me just try to understand very, very briefly. In connection with the redevelopment, a survey had to be made of the tiger salamanders in a certain area, correct?
Yes, any piece of property where there's the thought of having a threatened or endangered species. We had I think it's the short-eared owl. Short-eared owl? I think it's the short-eared owl and the tiger salamander. But this goes to any property owner. The ones that are really upset, and they were working with us in the litigation, were the mining companies in upstate New York. So if an owl lands on your piece of property, even though it could land at the Otis Pike Preserve across the road, you're stuck with creating habitat. And as Assemblyman Thiel saw yesterday very briefly, we have, because of that habitat, we have about 2,000 acres. We're going to preserve about 800 acres because there's a certain habitat that the owl has to have. And not only are we going to preserve it, we're probably going to have to cut the trees down and create grasslands for the owl. It's all good stuff.
Now, did the rules and regulations about the owl come into place after you'd already begun the survey with respect to the salamanders? Is that what happened out there?
Yes, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if you look at our town and the DEC did this for a long time. And if you look at the requirements for what the DEC were saying for us to build at EPCAL, and then you look at the legislation, they're not mirror images, but they require the same thing. So it's our thought that there were some guys out there that the DEC maybe didn't work so well with. I doubt we're the only ones. I'm sure there's some other miners upstate New York, and they said, listen, and so here's the conspiracy part about it. Through the grapevine, we heard that this was the swan song for some people when Governor Patterson was leaving. Please don't report that.
But as long as you didn't have to do a survey of the swans as well.
No, we don't have swans.
Supervisor, do you have any suggestions, structural suggestions, on how these differences of interpretation with state agencies such as the DEC could be made better?
You know, I think that there's a mindset. We have a mindset as a town, developers have a mindset, and the DEC have a mindset. And structurally, I think everybody has to understand that from the DEC standpoint, that not every developer has deep pockets and can withstand 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 years worth of permit approvals, and that these developers create jobs. But the developers have to understand that, you know, the DEC are well-intentioned. There are things that need to be done. We don't want to eradicate tiger salamander, although I think they're probably not endangered because we have so many of them on Grumman. So I honestly think you almost have to put them in the room, as I've done, and bash everybody together until they realize that everybody's got to be willing to give a little bit, and I have not seen that recently. And I may be a conservative Republican, but I will be the first person to tell you that there is no way I redevelop EPCAL without the help of the environmental community, the DEC, and the governor and the Senate and the Assembly. And you haven't seen the last of us. We've got something coming.
Questions?
I just suggest that if you have a tiger salamander problem and that owl, if you introduce the owl to the salamander, you won't have a salamander problem.
I've been working on it. Thank you, everybody.
Supervisor, thank you very much. This is very educational. This is the first meeting we've had, and so if you do see the salamander issue added to the governor's mandate relief package, you would feel personally you've been responsible for that. But we appreciate your time, really. Your very thoughtful comments,
Take
too.
care.
Thank you. We've been joined by County Executive Steve Ballone from Suffolk County. I want to invite the County Executive up. Next. County Executive, please.
Great, thank you. Well, first I'd like to begin by thanking Governor Cuomo for being the first governor in decades to actually make mandate relief a priority. I applaud the governor for taking the first real steps towards mandate relief in the executive budget. And I would say that the mandate relief that the governor has proposed in his budget will provide significant savings to Suffolk County now and in the years ahead. Of course, I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for being here once again on Long Island, talking about issues of importance to us here in Suffolk County. Senators Marcelino and Martins, also Assembly Members Thiel and Levine, and all the members of the Mandate Relief Council for the important work that you are doing and for your dedication in soliciting input from local officials and residents from all across from all across New York State. Just the fact that the Mandate Relief Council is reaching out in such a comprehensive way sends an important message that you understand that working together, we can do more to relieve pressure on local budgets and preserve vital services. I am thankful that the governor's budget provides over $140 million in relief to Long Island over the short term. I support the plan for the takeover of 100% of the costs of Medicaid growth, which will be phased in over the next 3 years. And I also support the governor's plan to enact pension reform, which will have a major long-term impact on our state and on our region, as well as reducing the county's administrative burden under the early intervention and preschool special education programs. These items will go a long way towards helping us meet our future budget challenges. When residents and businesses look to the future, they will know that we are on a path to long-term fiscal sustainability, which is very important, and that we will have enormous benefits as a result throughout our state. But Suffolk County, like so many counties throughout New York, has been pinched by immediate challenges as well. We're pinched between declining revenues due to the economic challenges we face, and, of course, the rise in mandated social safety net programs, also a result of the economic downturn. Suffolk County needs help, and we're hopeful that the Mandate Relief Council can lead the way. These are areas that we believe can reduce mandates while protecting vital services. This is by no means an exhaustive list of things that could be done, but it is I think, example of the type of things that the state can do without placing any or reverting any significant burdens back on the state that could be helpful to us on the county level. First is the audit recovery repayment. Allows Suffolk County and other counties to recoup the costs associated with auditing programs such as the Handicapped Children's Program, which will allow for more audits to be conducted. The HEAP program. Eliminate HEAP applications for clients already eligible for food stamps and/or temporary assistance, which would free up resources to be allocated to those in need. We have to, during the season, hire a significant number of individuals to process these applications, and they are already eligible if they are in the TANF program. So just let them, if they're already in that program, not have to process another application. Return maintenance of service roads to the New York State Department of Transportation. The DOT has in the past transferred the maintenance of service roads adjacent to the Long Island Expressway and Sunrise Highway to Suffolk County. These service roads have been transferred pursuant to Section 10, Subdivision 25 of the New York State Highway Law, which permits the New York State Commissioner of Transportation to transfer maintenance of frontage, margin, or service roads that he determines not to be part of the state highway system to local municipalities where the roads are located. These roads have been transferred without the concurrence of the county or reimbursement for the costs associated for their maintenance. I would say amend Article 2, Section 10, Subdivision 25 of the New York State Highway Law, adding a provision which precludes the transfer of maintenance of frontage, margin, or service roads of state roads without the approval of the local municipality. Operation and maintenance assistance. The New York State DEC previously had an operation and maintenance assistance program that reimbursed municipalities up to 1/3 of eligible annual costs. The program ceased during the early 1990s. A survey of county and other local municipal facilities indicates that higher levels of treatment are required. Increased use of chemicals and the increasing age of systems have all increased operation and maintenance costs. Many of the DEC mandates require that these increased costs, but are no longer subsidized by the O&M program. It is proposed that New York State provide operation and maintenance assistance in the amount of 25% of eligible costs for municipal wastewater treatment facilities. Medicaid. Restrict inpatient drug detox. Place a limit rather than the current unlimited availability to be more in line with private insurance coverage. Department of Environmental Conservation. Update the New York State Education Law to allow for electronic submission of construction plans, currently required with physical signature of the design professional. This would be in line with the county's goal of electronic application and plan review, as well as lower county costs through efficiencies. The Sexually Transmitted Disease Unit. Eliminate or streamline the New York State HIV tracking system into the same system used for STD reporting on the New York State Health Commerce System. This would eliminate duplicative work and free up resources. And it would eliminate the need for paper copies of the same information entered into the Health Commerce System. Again, these are by no means an exhaustive list of the things they can do, but I think are an example of some of the types of mandates that we face at the municipal and county level of government that the state could provide relief on without, again, placing any new significant burdens on the state. Thank you very much, Governor.
Questions from the panel?
Just one. Hi, Steve.
Hey, so
How are you?
How are you? Good to see you, Fred.
Good. Looking forward to see you in Albany on Tuesday.
Yes, thank you. Always love going to Albany.
Is that on the record?
You're the one. It is hard to
You're the
match the
one?
charm of Albany in February, but my question, Supervisor Kamen had talked about the issue of Fashion Institute and
Yes.
community college tuition. Would you like to offer any kind of opinion with regard to?
Yeah,
that?
I think certainly it's a fairness issue. You know, particularly when you talk about the town supervisors who don't play a role in the community colleges.
You weren't one that long ago. So.
That's right. I still remember those fond memories when I was in Babylon. But I think it is an issue of fairness. If a individual chooses to go to a community college outside of the jurisdiction in which they live. I think they're free to make that choice, but I don't think that local taxpayers should have to bear the burden of that choice. So I think that is something that it would be good if the state provided relief on that issue.
Thank you.
Questions?
Just,
Senator?
it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Jack.
Thank you. The Medicaid takeover of any increases is being phased in over the next 3 years. One of the questions I've had,
Yep.
and I understand the benefit to the county.
Yep.
I don't necessarily understand the benefit to the state. And as our taxpayers are the same, Suffolk County taxpayers, Nassau County taxpayers are also New York State taxpayers.
Right.
I'm concerned that the state's takeover and centralized management of a Medicaid system statewide, and whether or not that would actually save money for the New York State taxpayer, which of course includes our Suffolk County and Nassau County taxpayers as well. Has there been any analysis, have you seen anything that would show that the taxpayers themselves would save money? One of the themes that we had earlier was that the best level of government be charged with doing a certain task. And is the state better capable of handling a centralized Medicaid system statewide with all of the different pressures and needs throughout New York State by county or by region than the county would? What's your thought?
Well, I can honestly say I have not seen an analysis of that. That is something that we're going to be looking at very closely. We're actually putting together now a performance management team in Suffolk County that will be examining that issue and a number of others looking for efficiencies in county government. But I think the state is although the state, of course, is facing its own financial difficulties, has a greater capacity to meet those difficulties than the county does presently.
Just because it has a bigger budget.
More available resources from which to identify funding.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions?
Quick question down here. This is going to seem very prosaic. Do you have a net estimate of the cost savings for submitting electronically the construction plans?
I do not have a figure, but we'll provide that.
That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Absolutely.
Senator?
Yeah, I'm going to try this one more time. The reason I'm asking this question,
You've asked this before?
yes, you weren't here, though, so maybe I can get a fresh answer. But the reason why I'm doing this, in case those of you haven't figured it out, is I'm looking for an overall, or one thing that we could look at and say that this is the thing that I got from a town supervisor, from a county executive, from a village administrator, from anybody.
Right.
That seems to cross all lines. That is, if we could address it, we could save a large group a large amount of money. That's the purpose of this question. I'm not getting that answer. I'm getting individualized targets from each entity. So far, it's been a different thing for everybody. We're obviously all saving money or trying to save money. That's an overall theme, but I'm looking for a topic or something. But if you had your druthers, if there was one thing, one mandate that you could wish away that would assist your county and your constituents the most, what would it be?
Well, look, the biggest drivers for us, of course, it's early education spending, it's Medicaid, it's pension. Those are the drivers, and
You only get one wish.
If I had a wish, if I could do that, the biggest cost for us is pension costs. I mean, that is the thing that on an immediate level is the biggest thing that is rising. That is hurting our financial picture.
Thank you.
Questions?
And, Steve, historically, New York was one of only 2 states that forced the counties to share the expense of Medicaid. And back in 2005, we capped the increase in Medicaid at a time when rising Medicaid expenses were one of the great challenges facing almost every county
Right.
that had people who needed the assistance of Medicaid, which is almost every county,
Yeah.
In the state of New York. And to the extent that this is largely, it is a federally mandated program, I appreciate that the counties would like not to have to pay for it, given that it's simply the state that's requiring the imposition of not the imposition, but requiring the counties to
Make the contributions.
monitor. I would suppose that because the state is a greater entity, the state may have a greater economy of scale in terms of delivering and monitoring and administering the program. You see it that way?
I do, and look, healthcare is an issue that obviously is in flux. There are a lot of things and a lot of changes that are happening right now, but it is one of those crushing burdens on local municipalities and on counties. And I think it's very important what the governor's done in the executive budget. Any relief on the Medicaid side is important to us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
County Executive, thank you very much for your time and your comments.
Thank you very much.
I've had a request to just go out of order based on a scheduling demand. Next up will be Michael DeLuise, the President of the Melville Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you very much. Good morning. On behalf of the more than 350 member companies in our chamber, I thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts on this most important topic affecting each and every New Yorker. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and thank you, members of the Mandate Relief Council. My colleagues and I applaud you, Senators, and we applaud you for the refreshing atmosphere of bipartisanship that our great state is currently going through. We're very happy with it. The business community is very, very pleased. We ask you to continue to call on us to help you as you take down the roadblocks that now stand in the way of New York's success. We want to work with you to eliminate those mandated programs that are destructive to our economy and quality of life, whether it's sewer and garbage districts, whether it's health, education. We're here to work with you. We want you to put us to work. We can help and we will support your efforts. Business leaders are used to making tough decisions. Like you, we know that in the long run, by making the right decisions, no matter how tough they might be, there will be substantial benefits felt by the entire community. Tell us what we can do to help you. Right? Tell us how we can make our investment in the future of this great state the most effective it can be. Without a doubt, we realize that you have a difficult job ahead of you, but from where we sit as business people on Long Island, it really does seem that you guys are off on the right track. So what we're asking is, tell us what to do. How can we as business people partner with you to get some of these mandates taken care of? Senator Marcellino, you said, what's the most important mandate to be taken away? For us as business people, anything that stands in the way of our success, we can help you. But every dollar that, whether it comes off taxes or the burden of our employees or our neighbors, it's hard to do business in this state because of a lot of what you're talking about today. Tell us how we can help and make it better. And that's what we want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the panel?
Yes,
Quick comment. Tell Vicki we say hello.
I will. I'll tell her. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd just like to invite up Margot Garant, who's the mayor of the village of Port Jefferson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the council, for going to the four corners of New York State and hearing from everybody. Mayors are unique, I feel anyway, because we represent small villages, but I feel we are in the first line of defense for the town and county supervisors, and we deal with unique problems. In our village of Port Jefferson is a waterfront community, so we have mandated DEC issues to deal with. We have major transportation issues to deal with, but we have all of the employment and the pension issues to deal with as well. And in my opinion, the pension issue, Senator Marcellino, is the immediate front runner. I'll give you an example. When I first took office in 2009, our pension contribution was $199,000. It then was increased to $320,000 last year, And when we got the letter last year for this year's budget, we said, Mayor, the pension contribution is going to go up to $465,000. It was about a 60% increase. So we budgeted accordingly. We put $480,000 aside, and the bill came in at $582,000. Now, that might not sound like a lot of money, but I'm talking about the percentages and the overall increases and how we as small and large municipal entities are trying to set our budgets. So I believe the way that the fund is being managed needs to be changed immediately. I mean, to look at a 2-year look-back period and as a rate of return at 7.5% to sort of figure out how to manage those funds, and then to fall short on that and ask us to pick up the taxpayers and cut services again and change, capital infrastructure project budgets, it's just not possible. So, in my opinion, that needs to change. And if we get our letters and we set our budgets based on the letters that we get from the retirement system. So if there is a way to amortize that out for 10, 20 years and ask us to pay over a timeline that's more manageable for us, we are happy to do that. But it is impossible for us to continue to plan when we are getting bills that are an 80% increase over last year's without the ability to be able to plan for that. Last year, our village laid off 7 individuals. Many individuals took advantage of the state's incentive to retire, which I thought was wonderful. We are not going to be able to hire anybody into a new tier unless we are able to create more jobs and get people back to work. In my real job, I'm a real estate attorney, and I can't tell you how many people I help on Long Island try not to lose their homes on a daily basis. So this is a very big concern. I believe people choose to live in villages for quality of life issues. We paved more roads last year than we have in 20 years. We've fixed infrastructure. I have a grant from the DEC, $1.6 million, to manage our stormwater runoff. We have to contribute 25% to that grant. We're happy to do that because we do believe in partnerships, but the partnership has to be a two-way street. We are going to be entering into a session with our union because our union contract expires. I'm going to be asking my employees to freeze wages for 2 years. But I think that on the state legislation, you folks can declare a financial emergency and save us all from doing that union to union and ask the wages to be frozen for 1 or 2 years until we figure out what mandates are moving forward or what more immediate leave can be granted and take that tough job away from us or shoulder us, stand at the table with us shoulder to shoulder and making that kind of a mandate. Labor relation issues, the rule of 3 should be the rule of 10. We have a civil service list. I have to pick from the top 3. I interview the top 3. They've never even looked at a building plan in their whole entire life. They don't even know what it means to work out in the field. We need to expand that list so I can hire the best person for the job instead of saying, those 3 people don't fit, so I'm not going to hire. I'm going to just make do with what I have. So there's a lot of things I think you can do within the labor relations law, declaring some sort of emergency now to help us. On the county level, I don't even know if they got the same kind of discrepancy in their pension contribution bill that we did. But when I spoke to my town supervisor, Mark Lesko, and I told him, I said, Mark, did you get your bill? Look. And when I told him what had happened, I think he lost, his face went white. Because I don't know if you can find $3 million extra in your budgets these times. So we'd like to continue to fund our capital improvement projects, pave our roads, take care of our waterfront beaches, deal with, the environmental mandates, which we can fund at this time. But there's got to be some more control on the pension management side of things, and we need help getting people back to work. I mean, that's really the bottom line here, and I think that's the senator's goal, the governor's goal in putting this committee together. But we need immediate help. And anything that you can do for the long run is only going to benefit us in the long run, but we really need immediate help.
Thank you, Mayor. Questions? Sure. Senator.
Mayor, thanks for being here. As a former mayor myself, I understand fully your concerns with regard to pensions and budgets. To contextualize, we're service organizations. Mm-hmm. You can look at it that way, whether it's a village, a town, a county, the state itself. The largest share of our budgets are our payrolls, our personnel. And when our pension contribution rates are going up 30, 40% per year, it's extraordinarily difficult.
Try 60 and 80.
Even
no,
more,
that's my number, 60 and 80. And my staffing went down.
Even more so.
Okay.
You have to pinch in other places, and your residents are going to, as a result, have to do with less during this difficult period. there has to be a better way, and I agree with you, certainly. To the extent that we can provide stability in budgeting, not only for villages, but school districts, towns, every level of government, it's that stability in budgeting when it comes to pensions, both when it's going up and when it's coming
Agreed.
down, that we're lacking, given the system and the way that it's geared right now. And certainly it's a goal of ours.
I just, when you get a bill and it says you're going to go from 320 to 465, and it's the state's document, and then the bill comes in at 582, I have no recourse. If I had an employee who was managing that, they wouldn't be working for me anymore. I mean, that's the degree that is, now I have to go find 120,000 of reserves or take it from some of these important programs that we want to move ahead, or I don't want to eliminate anybody. And the other thing is, last one in, first one out. If I hire somebody right now, guess what? If I have to go through another round of layoffs, that's the person who's going back to the unemployment line. So we don't even know which direction we're going with some of the guidelines on the labor relations side as well. So I was very hesitant to hire a new head of my building department, who my 13-year senior retired. I don't have a new head of my planning and building department. I'm trying to rebuild my Upper Port Jefferson, revitalize a transportation overlay district, and I'm working with a part-time person because I don't know if I can hire now, because that person might be the next one to go. So we really need to make sure that in the next couple of years, there are some initiatives that we can work with immediately and over time, because I think we are in the middle of a crisis. That's just that's how I see it.
I agree. Just for clarification, Mayor, what's your budget? in Port
$8.2
Jefferson?
million.
And your tax levy?
I'm not quite sure yet.
No, but last year, what was your tax levy? Of the 8.2 million, how much came in from taxes and how much came in from?
Oh, I'm sorry.
from other-
$4.5 million
sources?
came in from taxes.
$4.5 million. So, when we're talking about an increase of $200,000 over that $4.5 million, it's an incredible percentage in light of, your own constraints budgetarily.
Right, yeah, but we're only talking one part. That's not the healthcare contribution, that's not the, the other things that we're dealing with. And I will bring it up right now, although I promised I wouldn't speak about it, which is LIPA and grid. My village was served with a tax grievance last year, okay, that I dealt with proactively. I gave the LIPA grid plant a 10% reduction in the assessed valuation. They contribute $2.5 million to that $4.5 million. So because my village is not indemnified by the Suffolk County Treasurer's Office, and my taxpayers would have been having to pay that back taxes out of the budget, I lost revenue from my major asset, my power plant in the harbor. Monday I received another tax grievance from LIPA Grid. They're looking for a 75% reduction in their assessed valuation. Again, I have to go to the table with them and probably negotiate another reduced tax assessment, because I don't have any idea what's going on with the policy with respect to the energy plants on Long Island yet. So I'm going to go to the table and I'm going to be proactive, because I can't afford to pay back taxes. I can't afford my residents to be exposed to having to pay back taxes. So I'm taking a hit on my revenue side and a hit on the cost side.
The reason for my question, Mayor, was to contextualize the numbers that you were giving us. If it went up $200,000 on a $4 million tax levy, that in and of itself is a 5% of your tax levy increase in a 2% world.
Right, but
So,
and under your tax cap provisions, I think the entire cost or addition in the pension contribution should be exempt from the tax cap, the entire, because I would have nowhere to go with that increase that I just got, if I were to choose to not exempt my village out of the tax cap law.
Thank you, Mayor. Questions? Mayor, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, please welcome George Starkey, the mayor of the Village of Farmingdale.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
I have a handout. I'm not sure I'm going to give it to you, but there's there's no information on there, so I'll have some deniability. I looked at all of my professional colleagues ahead of me. I really like to introduce myself as a local farmer. That's where I got the practical, but no, I will give these out. I got the call yesterday afternoon, out at the farm working.
thanks, George. Thank you. It's good to see you, George. Thank you.
I've had the pleasure and the honor and privilege to serve on the Long Island Regional Planning Council, where, working with Chairman Cameron, we'd come up with a sustainability plan for Long Island. So I'm pretty well versed on so some of this stuff is pelagiared material, but the first one of my bullet points was to combine all collective bargaining on a state level with police, fire, CSEA, schools. There's this leapfrogging. I'm in the middle of negotiations now, and the conversation is always on who and what got what. It's never about what we can afford or what our realities are. And and the replication, the bargaining units, if you think about the 900 entities of government, and you think about how many different bargaining units are in each level of government, it just boggles the mind of the billions, I'm sure, of dollars. Number two is that before Tier 6 kicks in, we'll be broke in the village, and the thing that came to mind is I'm actually going to come here and lobby for mandates, because I don't think you're going to get rid of a lot of them. They get a life of their own, whether it be political or the needs. But what about mandates that could maybe help cancel out some of the problems that the first mandates created? It's a little thinking out of the box like Jack likes to do.
Two negatives or a positive, Mayor?
Something like that, yeah. Didn't they teach that in school somewhere? But one of the things that is really burdensome on my village is a mandatory, I'm asking for mandatory contributions towards health benefits. Now, we've tried on our own, and we're not getting a lot of traction. You know, health benefits right now this year are $19,000 per year and climbing, and I hear about the retirement, but nobody ever talks about the health benefits. And I think it's a bigger problem than the retirement crisis, because that ebbs and flows, but I've never heard of health insurance going backwards ever to where we got a break from that. And when they do retire, we're stopping the payments into the retirement system, but the health benefits continue infinitum. And I do have a list. I didn't bring it. I have 5 retirees over 90, and this one woman down in Florida will be 100 this year. God bless her. But it's like, and granted, it's not the full boat retirement, but we pay the Medicare or whatever, Part Ds, all of the other supplementals to the tune of about $5,000 or $6,000 once they get to a certain age. And then raise the vesting age, and I wrote in on there in my scribbly handwriting, not the vesting age for the retirement system so much, but right now, vesting also includes health benefits. So we have people getting into government later in life, second career choices, that are coming in 40, 45 years old, put their 10 years in my village, some places it's 5 years, and they are vested for health benefits. So for 10 years out, from 55 to 65, until Medicare, I always get those confused, Medicare or Medicaid, whatever one, Medicare kicks in, you have hundreds of thousands of dollars for services not even performed. The number in my budget is mind-boggling. You know, I read a book, and I always tell my business associates to read it, so we have a great topic for conversation, and it's good to great. And there's a section in there they talk about rinsing your cottage cheese, and that's what I think you're going to hear from local government, village government. When you get down to the small stuff, you know, you guys are looking at the big Medicaid, hundreds of millions. You know, it's the nickels and dimes that add up to the dollars really quick that I think I don't want to lose sight on from a local level. But that raised the age, and that we're never going to have the strength, just like the previous mayor had stated, that unless we all stand together, because there's going to be heat for all of this stuff. This is really out of the box stuff. And we can't do it alone. Fire department issues, and this is scary, because fire department issues as regarding, in particular, LOSAP, length of service awards programs. That is something coming down the pike that no one even wants to look at. And I know in our particular case, and I've actually put this in writing, my board uncovered lies and actuarial malfeasance where the public was asked to vote on a program that was based on a lie. We found a deficit. Now, we were supposed to be fully funded when I was elected mayor, and we found a deficit of $800,000 using real actuarial numbers. And our program, now we're going to have to pay $125,000 for another 15 years just to get it funded. I'm all for the LOSAP program. I just think that the public was sold a bill of goods in that they weren't given the true figures and facts when they voted on this, and not that they wouldn't have voted on it. But we had a case where we actually had another vote, and they wanted to lower the age from, I believe it was 65 to 62, and it wouldn't cost you any more. And that was what it was sold as. And that actually caused a $500,000 plug. So we were lied to. Workman's compensation reform, and I'm focusing on fire departments. Being a private business owner, Workman's comp is one of my large overheads, and in our village, I dug into it, and one of the things that blew me away about volunteer fire departments is that because there's no salaries involved, they have to assess risk by the size of your population. Not the number of calls you go on, not the size of your community, but, I'm sorry, not the number of calls you go on, or I actually put it in writing. Thank God I'm keeping myself on task here. Excuse me, gentlemen. Okay, so I personally found a safety group. So that was the issue. So it was based on population, not a number of calls or other criteria that would better gauge the risks. Our rates were $80,000 just for our volunteer fire department, and climbing at an alarming rate. And I personally had to go out, and I found a safety group after research. And I found it because I have a safety group. I'm really in agriculture. I farm on the east end of Long Island, and they have a farmer safety group. And if collectively we save money as a group, we get a rebate back, and it's pretty significant, somewhere to the tune of 30–35%. And I actually found one for a fire department. And I went back to the broker who was handling, it was almost like, wow, we found that, It's something that's not really volunteered out there. Like, how many fire districts know that there's a safety group that could save a lot of money? The other thing, and this is taken, and I'm stealing this from the Rouse Foundation because it has such an impact on me, a state law requiring, see, I'm asking for mandates, requiring uniform fire apparatus. How come the city of New York can pay $250,000 for a grade A pumper and $400,000 for a ladder truck, and Long Island taxpayers have to pay $600,000 for a pumper and over $1 million for a ladder truck, and some of them with two? It just blows me away, and with chief cars and everything else, so that, the chief's car is only $28,000, you buy it on a state bid, but when you get done putting all the bells and whistles and lights and everything else, it's another $20,000. Why? Because nobody's saying you can't do that. We try to do that in my village because we have control of the fire department budget, but it's a screaming match. And that's something where we need people to stand with us and say enough's enough. One of the other things, and I had a call into Jack's office about this, one of the things, and Jack was really my idol in this regard, he did a reassessment of his village, and we were getting slammed by tax certiorieries. So we looked into it, and we went into the ORPS program, and we did a total revaluation of our village, and we created, from one tax base, we created two buckets, I'll call it, a commercial base and a residential base. And we locked those in, we did the reassessment, we uncovered well over $1 million worth of potential liability if we hadn't done this reassessment. So thank you, Jack, and I recommend it to everyone. Now, the good news is that we solved the problem and we see those numbers coming down. The bad news is that we just passed a huge revitalization / code for our downtown of Farmingdale. Went through a full secret process, 3 years of hearings, and we now have a new mixed-use code for our downtown, allowing density that was planned out for 35 years, that we know when we put the first shovel in and we get to the last shovel, we're okay with traffic, sewage, water, and et cetera. And we told the public at the time that most of these proposals coming were condominium projects. And under ORPS, if they were condominium projects, they would benefit the residential bucket. Everybody would have a bigger base. The economy in the world that we live in now, no banks and no builders can build these condos. There's just no market, and the banks are just not funding them. So every one of the proposals that we're receiving now on our board is for rental. Still great. We need rental just probably more than we need the condos. The problem is that the way the ORPS law was written, that now automatically goes into the commercial bucket. There's no option for us to have it for the residential. Keep the commercial, mixed use, commercial on the floor, bottom floor, residential above, keep the commercial in the commercial bucket, but we lose that ability to help our residents with those apartments. Now, if they convert to condominiums later, which all of them are being constructed so they can convert, it's very specific in construction details for sewage and things like that, they will still stay in the commercial bucket. And I actually found, I have all the information I'll hand. It's got some personal village stuff on here from Michael Haberman. I met with him on it, and he actually went right to the section of the law where the problem exists. So I'll give you that before I head out. And lastly, and hopefully before my term in office is over, I am a true believer in consolidation where it makes sense. We have a water crisis in our village. We only have 3 wells. We have plumes coming down north of us, and we're allowing all this new development, and we can't supply the water. So we got a grant from the Department of State to do a consolidation study, and I reached out to Suffolk County Water because we actually have interconnects with them. We're right on the border. And the proposal is beyond anything I could have ever imagined. They would come in and invest $4 million into infrastructure. We charge our average rate, which is the middle use rate, is $3.40 a 1,000 gallons of water. They charge $1.52. The $4 million worth of infrastructure upgrades would be financed and paid for out of the $1.52. I mean, it doesn't get better than this. The problem is that the Nassau-Suffolk line is like the Mason-Dixon line I've discovered. Very, very tough to, there are 56 water districts on this side of the border that aren't too happy about Suffolk County even contemplating coming into Farmingdale. We're not asking for enabling legislation to come into Nassau County. We're saying we want them to operate our Farmingdale system. We own the infrastructure, we set the rates, it's all our system, they're managing it, and we're getting a tremendous amount of pushback. We're waiting for a outside experts, because we also are talking to Bethpage Water Authority, or District, I'm sorry. And we're comparing an apple and an orange, and we're gonna figure out which is the best deal. But if the Suffolk County deal does work out to be the better deal, I'm gonna need your help, because it's almost like everyone's dug in their heels now, and it's getting ugly. So here we're trying to do something good for the residents, new infrastructure, lower rates, long-term water stability, and I'm having a problem on this side of the, and we all own the water, folks. It's all our resource, and we better figure it out, because the economy of scales of 1.3 million customers to my village of 9,000, it's a no-brainer, and we might need your help with that.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Any questions from the panel? Senator?
If I had a wish,
I think I know what it would be, George. You made a point about having the state step in and do your negotiations for you. I just want to hear if you really mean what you're asking. Most of the villages, one of the previous testifiers on the mayor said that people move into villages because they like the services, they like the quality of life, they like the things that are provided by a local village and local control. Are you willing to give up that kind of local control if the state comes in and basically takes over negotiations with your staff?
again, I don't see it as changing anything other than the dynamics of the negotiations that when you...
Staff will be working for the state now.
Um,
They would no longer be your employees. They're going to be working for us. Do you really want that?
Well, I think there's something in between 1 and 10, Senator, that when you look at the hodgepodge of the way things are done now, and when you see in the police department specifically, because we always read about it, that it's this leapfrogging situation, I don't think we're doing a very good job now. So if you have a better idea, I'm open to it, but I don't think we're getting it done on our level. And I want to point out also that for the 4 years that I'm in office, this last budget that we're proposing, I've stayed under the governor's 2% tax cap. And I lobbied for it. I went up to Albany, and I don't like going to Albany. And I went and I lobbied for it, and my local representatives were a little shocked. Are you kidding? And I said, no, because now I have some strength when I sit down at the table. We don't have it. And I've said no more than I've said yes. Now, it doesn't make me the most popular mayor in my village, but we've stayed under the 2% tax cap for 4 years, and we're going to continue that. So, but it means saying no more than yes. If you can help me some way, partner with us to help us say no, because let's face it, all of us as elected created the problem. We did. We took out contributions to Tier 4 when things were going good. We kicked the can down the road, and now we have the crisis. We all knew it was coming. Well, now it's here. So are we going to stand together to find solutions to the problems? Yeah, I want to partner with you. But we don't have the strength as little individual bargaining units. So no, I don't want my staff to be state employees, but I do need help at the bargaining table with, you are going to contribute something to your health benefits. You just, in real life, and we can't do that at our level.
So the Tier 6 is what the governor is proposing in the Tier 6 process for the new tier for pension would basically do what you're talking about.
It's huge, but now we're talking probably, by the time we turn over, like I said, I think I put in bullet number 2 is that we're going to be broke. So it's thank you, but we need other areas then, until that helps us, to solve some of our other problems. Now, if we can have a mandate to fix some of the problems that we have and can get the money to live that long to get to that point, I think it's a great idea, sure. I'm definitely for Tier 6.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
And, from one old farmer to another.
Don't you miss it?
Thanks for, no, I don't miss it. I don't miss it. It's too hard.
No, I love it.
Farming taught me to go to law school. Thanks.
You were a smart farmer, yeah.
Thanks for a job well done.
Thank
I'm going
you.
to miss you in public office, and I hope that condition doesn't last.
Well, God willing, if it's meant to be, the economy has bashed me. I could potentially lose one of my farms, and I'm working now to try to stop that. I need to be at the controls a little bit more, and this is overwhelming. I never in my wildest dreams ever thought when I ran for mayor I would be sitting before you folks talking about this, but I think we bring a practical sense. Farmers bring a practical sense to some things, and I hope that's been a help.
The work you accomplished in changing the zoning code for the village helps to ensure the village will remain a great village, even a greater village.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be huge. Thank
Well
you.
done.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sir.
Butch, good to see you.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
When it comes to homestead and non-homestead properties, so what you're suggesting is that if a property is built originally as rentals, and
Yes.
then converts back to condos at some point,
Yes.
that upon conversion, it should move from the non-homestead to the homestead.
That's
so
correct.
that the benefit can go to your residential tax base as opposed to your commercial tax base.
That's correct. We believe that with the mixed-use code and with the new development that's being proposed, that a significant relief will come to our commercial taxpayers now in our village based on the fact that they're getting the ground floor, they're getting and from a value perspective, there's money there to be had. So we want to share it. And right now, almost every development, because we proposed mixed use, every development is all going into the commercial bucket, to where now the commercial is about 40%, it's going to probably shrink down to 30%.
It's a product of the economy,
Yes.
which, when it changes, you want the village to be able to take the advantage of that change so
Have
that
to.
they can share some of that with the residential base.
We have to, because the residents, we're asking them to allow density and to think out of the box and bring new development into the downtown. They're the stakeholders, and what's in it for them? Granted, it'll look beautiful, we'll make sure of that, but we'd like to give them some kind of a relief from the highest taxes in the country.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, thank you. We're going to share your written comments with the entire board, so thank you very
Just
much.
give you this letter from Haberman.
We'll share that letter as well. Mayor, thank you very much. Appreciate it. No, thank you. Next speaker is Jack Kolka, the owner of Kolka Construction.
Good afternoon. My name is Jack Kolker. I'm a licensed professional engineer. I'm a builder developer. I'm a lead AP, so I have interest in development. I have interest in the environment. I'm also the founder of the Hauppauge Industrial Association and its past president and government relations chairman. I'm here to speak to you in my position with the Hauppauge Industrial Association. The Hauppauge Industrial Park is the largest industrial park east of the Mississippi. 55,000 employees, 1,300 companies. It is the economic engine of Suffolk County and the towns of Smithtown and Islip, which are the locations of the park. We are in a continuous battle to remain competitive with the rest of the country. It is not unusual for companies in the park to receive letters and inducements to go elsewhere. At the same time, we're looking to bring companies from across the country and across the world into Long Island. Presently, we were just approached by a company from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, who wants to open a pharmaceutical facility in Suffolk County. The problem is we must remain competitive. And I've listened to the previous speakers, most of them very good friends of mine, and I understand their problems. I understand having to address immediate emergency problems that occurred because of mandates. I listened to the salamander, and I remember Fred Theory. Remember the thing called the lighted turtle tunnel?
Yep.
Where a developer in the Hamptons had to build a lighted turtle tunnel across the road in order to get a permit to build his development. It's sort of a legendary folklore of Long Island. So salamanders don't surprise me so much in light of the lighted turtle tunnel. Mandates are basically taxation without representation. And I do want to applaud Governor Cuomo for his proactive bipartisan stance in an attempt to address mandates. We know, and I've listened to the wish list and the shopping list of the county executive, the town supervisors, the mayors, and I understand their problems and I sympathize with their problems. However, we have to address those emergency specifics. But just to do that and not resolve the problem would be like putting a Band-Aid on the proverbial cancer. The problem is you have to fix the system, not just mitigate the excesses. And what caused that problem? I listened to a great buzzword, law of unintended consequences. Jack, great. What happens, unfortunately, is you examine the system and thousands of words and verbiage get put into a bill, and sometimes the bill gets put on a legislator's desk 2 days or 2 hours before curfew time, and everybody votes on it, and then they spend the next 2 years trying to figure out what the bills meant. And many times, we find in that legislation onerous clauses that no one even imagined would be in that legislation, that was written by some staff member and could not really, in the time allotted, could not be analyzed by the individual legislators. So the system has to change. We have to address emergency items of problems that were put out by, say, by County Executive Malone, by John Kamen, by the previous speakers. However, you have to address the system. The system is that this last-minute legislative process, where basically the staff writes lengthy treatises into the legislation, and then for 2 years we're analyzing, there is only one simple solution that I think can be. And Senator Marcellini, you said, what's the wish list? My wish list is very simple. You know, I'm in the construction business, and every time we do a large project, and those type of projects are few and far between these days, you have to file an environmental impact statement. And it's a good idea, and I think it's important. Well, I, for one, think that any legislation passed by the Senate has to have a specific time allotted before it can be passed, and an economic impact analysis has to come along with that legislation. So that when you pass legislation that requires a mandate, along with that mandate has to be a detailed economic impact analysis of that legislation, and then there should be sufficient time by the public to see that impact, for the legislators to examine that impact, and for the public to make comment. So last-minute smoke-filled room deals in the last 2 hours of a session that already the clock stopped for 3 weeks can no longer happen. That is the cause of the problem. You have to address the problem, the systemic cause, as opposed to only addressing the specifics. We need to do this. We're in a crisis. Things aren't getting any better, obviously. We're in a very iffy economic situation. I can attest to that for both what is happening in the industrial park and also what is happening in the construction industry myself. Thank you.
Any questions from the panel? Wow, first time, no questions. Mr. Colco, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, please welcome Dr. Alan Groveman, the superintendent of the, I'm going to say it right, the Kennequot Central School District? Kennequot.
Hey, Governor. And naturally, as an educator, I've handed out some homework. So, thank you again. We thank the governor and certainly this panel for the opportunity that you're giving us to address the mandates and just the work you're doing, and I don't envy any of you your position in this regard. I thought I had a hard job till I see what your job is like. Good morning again, or it's actually good afternoon now. In November, the leaders of the superintendent organizations representing 700,000 students in 199 school districts in the Long Island counties of Nassau and Suffolk and the counties of the lower Hudson Valley, Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, and Dutchess, gathered in response to the governor's call for a plan to provide mandate relief. This tri-region coalition has developed a comprehensive proposal for mandate relief that we believe can yield substantial savings in the short term. In order to meet the longer-term challenges, and you've heard a number of groups talk about the short versus the long, we concur with the assessment that structural reform is needed to ensure accountability, sustainability, and cost containment. To this end, the Suffolk and Nassau Superintendent Councils also offer our proposals for long-term structural changes that align with the state's vision. We're providing you with 3 documents that highlight the proposals, including a more comprehensive white paper that provides detailed recommendations. The white paper also provides a common mandate relief agenda developed and endorsed by the coalition of the 3 groups. I'm not going to read you the whole short-term list. There's 13 of them in there. You can read those at your leisure. But I will tell you on our wish list is probably freeze and review all current proposed and pending mandates. As the last speaker mentioned, a lot of legislation gets passed with the best of intentions, and it's good legislation and well-meaning, but the costs aren't considered. We're trying to live within a 2% tax cap. We want to live within that cap. We recognize the need to live within that cap. But when costs keep getting transferred to the local school district, because like the local villages, we're the bottom of the food chain, we've got nobody but the local taxpayer to give that to. So when the state education department says we can't afford to print paper tests anymore, print them at the local level. We can't afford to have our representatives come down to speak to you in Long Island, come up to Albany, and we're sending 56 school districts or 70 school districts up to Albany instead of 1 representative down. It's not cost productive. Those kinds of costs on the short-term level, anything you can do to freeze and reduce that. And as I said, there are 13 of those. But in order not to take too much of your time, I'd like to talk about the longer-term issues. There are only 4 or 5 of those. Primary among those is authorize an expanded role for teacher assistants in the educational process. The medical model, the legal model, the accounting model, the engineering model have all moved into a duality of purpose. You go in to see your doctor now, you don't generally see your doctor. You see a PA, a physician's assistant. Then the doctor supervises that kind of system. We need to look at an educational model that allows us to do those kinds of things. As was wished for earlier, establish a regionally sensitive but statewide collective bargaining agreement for teachers. Teaching personnel across the state should have common working conditions, common patterns of compensation, and common requirements to be assessed as we're looking to do through APPR. Change staffing requirements to maximize cost savings resulting from the expanded use of technology and provide instructional services. For example, right now, we could use instructional technology to provide long-distance learning and bringing in support from other places, but we each have to still put a teacher in the classroom. There's no cost savings. There's a benefit to the students, but there's no cost savings. Evaluate, and you've heard this already, the long-term impact of Tier 5 and consider the creation of a Tier 6. We are aware that NICOS, our state organization, is a member of the Let New York Work Coalition and supports the establishment of a Tier 6. We're looking to establish a separate funding mechanism for charter schools. We recognize their importance, but we don't believe that public schools should be the funding source for charter schools. We're asking for the provision of meaningful financial incentives to promote school district consolidation. It's possible, it can be done, but it needs to be fiscally capable of being done, because we can't lay out more money than we're going to get back in the short run, because we can't afford to go over a 2% cap. And finally, we offer our assistance in your pursuit to make New York once again the Empire State. Our leadership offers you its extensive experience in both public education and in reformation of systems. And lastly, we offer an unwavering commitment to collaborate in developing new ways of ensuring accountability and excellence. And again, I thank you for the opportunity, and I thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Doctor. Questions from the panel?
Thank you. Just first, I want to clarify a point that before it takes root too firmly. There is an aging process for legislation. There is an opportunity for legislation to be reviewed by the legislature, and so let's deal with one thing at a time. I didn't hear you talk about APPR and the impacts to our local school districts with respect to the requirements of the regulations developed by the State Education Department as a result of the Race to the Top statutes that were passed a couple of years ago. I know that certainly in my district, the feedback I'm getting from superintendents has been strong, and they're rather concerned not only with regard to the evaluation process itself, but the cost that it imposes on local school districts with regard to these rubrics and the cost of the school district in purchasing that from private entities outside of the school district itself. Could you comment on that?
Certainly. In my district, for example, we're getting approximately $4,000 a year in Race to the Top money for the next 5 years, and it's costing us probably about $200,000 to $300,000 a year just to implement the training and other requirements of the program, and we haven't yet purchased the rubric systems that we need to put in place and then provide the training for those. Again, it's legislation that's well intended. It's necessary in many cases, but we're painting every school with the same brush. Connecticut, for example, we graduate over 96% of our students, and almost 90% of them go on to either additional college, vocational, or the armed services. We're not a failing school, but we have the exact same requirements as a school with a 40% graduation rate with a 20% college graduation attendance. Those mandates need flexibility. They need to reflect what's going on in the different districts so that not everybody has to spend thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars for things they don't necessarily need to do.
Doctor, I agree with you, and I applaud the governor in his approach, but I want to distinguish between the legislation itself and the statute, and now the interpretation of the statute as it has been interpreted through these regulations and imposed on our local school districts, because I think they're, unfortunately, two completely different things.
Correct.
If you look at the spirit of the statute, it's in keeping with the legislative intent that has already been discussed, and certainly the governor's intent as it has been expressed. But if you look at the regulations that have been approved, there seems to be a disconnect there. And I agree with you. You know, certainly, we're asking school districts that are successful, like yours and so many others here on Long Island that have been very successful, that graduate 96% or plus of the student bodies, and whose children are receiving excellent educations. And we're asking them to reinvent the wheel with regard to how they administer their own school districts. Again, lumping everyone in together.
Right.
So I understand that those $200,000 or $300,000 in these tough economic times with the 2% cap could best be used in other ways in your own school district. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, and that's part of the problem that we're having. The intent of the legislation is terrific. We all believe we need a formalized, structured assessment system that holds accountable staff, teachers, administrators, and superintendents. But the way some of the regulations have been the interpretation of the regulations have been put out have been contradictory and difficult to implement, and we're still up in the air waiting for the governor to take his action if the state education department can't do their job with the teachers union and settle the regulations out in terms of that court action that's pending right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.